Hi, I want to welcome you to Penumbra of Pleasure, Integrating Shadow for Deeper Intimacy in Relationships. First, I want you to celebrate yourself for having purchased this mini course and for having the courage to do shadow work, because it is not for the faint of heart. So I want to introduce myself to you. I'm Isabella, pleasure-centered trauma psychologist, somatic intimacy alchemist, shadow doula, and sovereignty coach, supporting heart-centered revolutionary relationships through the integration of intimacy wounds and the embodiment of your erotic life force. Why do I do this work? Why is it important? Because integrating intimacy wounds opens us up to more of our erotic life force energy, which is what you're made of anyway. It is part of your creative life force, right? It's just creation. Repressing shadow takes a lot of energy. It's like holding a beach ball underwater, right? So integrating shadow helps you connect to more pleasure, play, sexuality, even intuition, as well as creativity. And integrating shadow helps us come into our relationships with more of this radical self-ownership, accountability, and integrity of heart, which is ultimately the foundation for long-lasting connections. And finally, working through shadow aspects of ourselves opens up your capacity to receive. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. And I'll share also what brought me into this work. But first, I want to let you know what you're getting with this experience. First, we're going to identify what shadow is and how it's formed, why movement is important in expressing deeper aspects of the shadow, sort of the more tender parts of it. I'm going to share with you 5 common shadow strategies and patterns that correspond loosely with the chakra system. And we're going to explore statements for each of those 5 strategies. We're going to explore ways of exploring shadow, how to move through shadow work, and finally, a couple of kinky ways to bring shadow into your relationship. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. So I just want to share that a little bit about me and how I came into shadow work and why I'm so passionate about it. So I came into my 4-year certification in energy somatics after doing a PhD in trauma psychology. I had a full body breakdown after I had my 2 children. I got really sick with a viral infection, that became chronic in my body. And I had my intestines were a mess. I wasn't digesting food. I lost hair, weight. I lost my moon cycle. And, in this program, this 4-year certification in somatics, I began to recognize all the trauma, both personal and collective, I was holding in my body, but I didn't know it was there. And that it was unconsciously controlling me. And most of it was around intimacy wounds. It was about the ways that I had gotten hurt in my family of origin from the way I had been socialized and conditioned. And it wasn't until I arrived in my class on the shadow in year 2 of my training that I realized how much shadow I was repressing. So even though I had been trained as a doctoral student, as psychology PhD, I had no idea what my shadow was. I had only a vague sense of what it was theoretically until I started expressing it, until I started to name it, until I started to like the things that you feel like back here. When I started to bring those forward, I was able to move through the energy of them. And the reason why this was so repressed was because I had this really strong idealized self-image, right? The person I thought I needed to be good, right? As a psychologist, as a mom, as a partner, right? My shadow was completely hidden to myself. And I needed to excavate it. It wasn't enough for me to explore it through writing or journaling. It just wasn't enough. It was buried too deeply. So when I began to move the energy of the shadow, I began to experience pleasure run through my body in a way that I had never had before. And I started to feel the pleasure that was locked into aspects of my shadow, right? The part of me that loved to control, the part of me that loved to judge, the part of me that wanted to withhold love, right? These were all parts of myself that I was bringing into my relationship. So I really began to understand, like, oh yes, pleasure is locked into these boxes, but when I release it, I can put pleasure in its rightful place in my divine self, in my core authentic expression. So I believe in expression because we are creative, expressive beings, and moving our bodies helps us connect to especially the younger parts of us that were hurt, that are part of our shadow expression. So for example, like, it is the things that really, really, really keep us stuck are the youngest parts of us, like the most innocent parts of us that got hurt are the parts that I work with. Yes, you can journal, you can figure out ways that you're sabotaging yourself, but until you really bring it into those really tender wounds, that is where most of the sexual creative force is locked up. Okay. So, and I want to say that for those of us who have sustained more trauma, especially in childhood, connecting to sensation in the body will be more challenging if you're just doing it through awareness, right? That's why I'm so passionate about bringing it into movement and expression. Sometimes, through pleasure practices, we're able to do that as well, waking the body into sensation in a way that feels safe to the nervous system. So shadow alchemy and integration of intimacy wounds is the favorite part of my work that I offer, because it's ultimately connected to pleasure, play, sexuality, creativity. And I really, I feel like the world needs more of your energy. The world needs more of you out there, fully expressed. Okay. So let's talk about shadow and how it's formed. Okay. So when we're born, when you are born with the fullest expression of your erotic life force energy. You are hardwired for intimacy and connection. And because you are dependent for your caregivers for everything, including love, acceptance, connection, belonging, we obtain those, right? Those needs drive all of your behavior, right? As children, we believe that if we don't have those things, we will die. And in fact, it is true to some degree, because we do need love to thrive, right? So the human body is designed to survive. And that's why we often, we cut off parts of ourselves to be able to belong, to be loved, to be accepted. So, and we grow up in environments where love is demonstrated in imperfect ways, right? Even you, perhaps, if you're a parent, you know that you love your children unconditionally, but it comes out in conditional ways sometimes, right? The message that our children receive isn't of necessarily unconditional love. And, I say that for myself as well. I hope that to be the case, but, I'm a flawed human being. So the fact is that, our parents are unable to meet us in the fullest expression of our life force. So we learn how not to be in order to get love, acceptance, and belonging, right? Our developing brains and our nervous systems make conclusions about our environment, about who we are, about how the world works, about how relationships work, because we had to hide parts of ourselves, right? Because we can't be fully authentic in our expression. And so through a process of pruning, we bring forward the parts of ourselves that are wanted, accepted, liked, and we begin to sort of move back the parts that are ignored, unappreciated, even shamed or punished, right? They moved farther and farther back until sometimes they move so far back in the distance that they kind of disappear out of our awareness and consciousness, and they become part of our shadow. And this doesn't only happen with our caregivers, it also happens in our socialization into collective norms and expectations, right? Around what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, right? These bipolar ways of being in the world, right? Good, bad, all of these things. So, and I just want to name that, let's say your childhood was relatively easeful, right? No huge events, no big traumas. Well, I want to say that shadow can form, yes, from trauma, but also through the most benign experiences. And I'll share a quick story of my younger daughter who called me into her room, and she was quite agitated when she called me. And I was just in the middle of cooking something, and I asked for 3 minutes. I said, give me 3 minutes, I'll be with you. And she was sending a message of urgency, and I wasn't moving towards her with a sense of urgency. When I finally arrived in her room, she was shut down. I asked her what she wanted, and she was like, no, basically, she was basically letting me know, I hate you, I've cut you out, we're done here. And I could feel the pleasure she had in being able to withdraw her love from me. And so I named it. I let her know. She was 3 at the time. And I said to her, it feels good to like pull away from me, or to like not let me have your love, or I don't know exactly what I said, but I made it sort of accessible to her. And she admitted that, yes, it felt good to withhold. It felt powerful to withhold. Shadow is ultimately about the ways that we control and the experience of overwhelm or the experience of pain, and how we access power in moments where we are powerless, right? So it's just about power and control around the ways that we got hurt or injured in our childhood. So, I just want to again say that our fear of abandonment, our fear of rejection is greater than our need for authenticity at that age, right? And so we keep hiding who we really are, and we push those parts of ourselves further back into unconscious. And this happens without even knowing it. Yes, sometimes you have memories of having made these decisions, but most of these are nonverbal. Most of these are unconscious decisions. And, these parts of us, they have energy in them, right? They have energy in them. And so as our lives progress, they start to emerge. They start to show up in our relationships. They start to show up in all parts of our lives, right? In our work, even. And the more intimate and deep your relationship is, the more shadow will arise, because it'll get poked more, because these are intimacy wounds, right? So the deeper the intimacy, the more your shadow will get poked. And all relationships have shadow, right? Parent-child relationships, sibling relationships. So, I don't necessarily, I come from a multi-amory, decolonizing relationships kind of point of view. So I don't necessarily make a distinction between monogamous or polyamorous relationships. I find that the patterns are basically the same. But in polyamory, for example, shadow can come up particularly around jealousy, feeling excluded, feeling unappreciated, feeling like, perhaps one partner is receiving more attention than you. Anywhere that dings an intimacy wound can trigger control patterns in which we withhold love, we withdraw love, we engage in projection, or we become aggressive, right? And, I've noticed that even engaging in polyamory can even be a cover for hiding some of our addictive patterns of needing a lot of attention. Polyamory can be a way of even avoiding intimacy by spreading yourself out among lots of people. Yeah, so it can show up in very, very subtle and sneaky ways. So again, just wanting to say that, I go from I work from a place of compassion. And so as part of facing your shadow, it's helpful to know that this is just a place you got really, really hurt. Right? It's just a place you got really, really hurt. And so just want you to feel in this moment a sense of like, this is not something that you need to fear. This is just a really hurt part. I don't want you to put energy in trying to get rid of it. We're going to be putting energy towards loving it more, approving of it radically. Okay. So as you move through life, your shadow will control your life in ways that you're not aware of, and will keep presenting you with uncomfortable opportunities to integrate it, right? And, shadow is designed to remain hidden. So it's the people and the circumstances, the repeating patterns that are here to show us, to mirror back to us, something's here, right? And we project, of course, our shadow onto other people in form of criticism and judgment. What we judge in others are often things that we judge in ourselves, right? Everything you find annoying in other people, you judge and reject from yourself, right? These point to shadow issues. So think about, just for a moment, who are the people in your environment? What do you dislike about them? But also, what fascinates you about them? What do you wish you had that they had? Who are the people on social media that you follow that you like or dislike? Who do you put on a pedestal and why? Right? Those are some of the questions you can ask yourself. Also, you want to ask yourself questions around like, what are your partner's most disliked habits, or what infuriates you about one of your children? Now that will point to a shadow aspect of yourself. So whenever you unconsciously repeat a pattern or repeat a behavior, let's say, it's a clue that a shadow part is taking control, right? If you have a hard time maintaining a relationship, or if you have a pattern of, let's say, dating the same person, partnering with people who are very similar, then you might want to be bumping into shadow aspects. Okay. So in essence, wherever you struggle in your life, that's where shadow is hiding. So you want to get curious about those places. And how we stop ourselves from facing our shadows is engaging in projection, right? Projecting our disowned parts on other people, mostly our partners. Self-righteousness, making excuses, justifying ourselves, denial, exoneration, self-indulgence, repression, right? Straight up repression like I did, and evasion. So I'm going to go into the 5 general patterns, what I call relational strategies that keep intimacy away from us. So to different degrees, we all have all 5 strategies, but we tend to engage in 2 or 3 primarily, and then the other 2, not as much. Okay. So the first one is the creative strategy. And this is a home environment, perhaps where, there was some hostility in the home environment. Perhaps there was mental illness in your family. There was intimate partner violence among your parents. There was this general misattunement. Perhaps a parent was ill and couldn't really attune to you, or was a highly anxious parent, was very ungrounded. And so in this creative strategy, the energy is of holding together, right? Sort of pulling the shoulders in and together. And what the strategy does, the strategy is to leave your body and to check out, right? And the fear here is of annihilation. Okay. So the next strategy is the merging strategy. And this happens between around the age of 2 or 3, when a child is really getting into their no and their empowered no, right? The sense of themselves as, ooh, I have power here, right? When I say no. Actually, no, that's not what it is. The merging is around, actually happens around 6 months to 2 years. Sorry, I skipped over one. So this is the wound of not having received sufficient nourishment. nourishment can mean actual food, but what it's really talking about is attention, care, attunement. And, oftentimes, we all have this wound to some degree. And it is often the ones that have like big needs. We all have needs, but there are some of us that we need more, right? We need more because we're capable of more connection, but then we're capable of, let's say, 120% connection, and then we only get like 70%, right? So the gap is bigger. It's going to be bigger there. And this pattern holds together, holds on, and clings. This is a pattern that wants to merge. It's the pattern of codependency. Oftentimes it shows up as being in the role of rescuer and wanting to, to rescue someone in order to be rescued in return. And the fear here is of abandonment. Okay. So the third strategy is the enduring strategy, which is what I was just talking about, coming into that empowered no at age 2, feeling a sense of autonomy, those beginning phases of autonomy. So in this intimacy wound is about being over controlled. It is about, think about the helicopter parent that tries to control impulses, that doesn't let the child assert themselves in healthy ways, that is manipulative and like, oh, you gotta do this for mommy, right? And so the child, in order not to lose love, basically defeats their own will for the will of the parent, gives up their own will. So in this pattern, the energy is of holding in, and it's a holding in into the third chakra. Like the creative strategy was first chakra, root. The merging strategy is around the second chakra. The enduring strategy is the third chakra, just around the solar plexus. So again, this energy is about holding in, hiding the authentic self, pulling it way back. And in this pattern, the pattern is to suffer in silence, again, to hold in, to not show the authentic self, to please other people, but then be in resentfulness. And the fear here is of being defeated, crushed, and humiliated. Okay. So the fourth strategy is the challenging strategy. It is around the heart, the wound of betrayal. This wounding happens when there is one parent who is seductive and one parent who is humiliating. And it often happens when there's narcissistic parenting. But so, what I'm trying to say is that there's one parent who says, oh, you're special a special child, you're my little boy or my little girl, or my baby. And then the other parent is perhaps jealous and humiliates the child, cuts them down in some way. And so there's a betrayal wound that happens around this, like the child doesn't know who they are because they're receiving really opposite messaging from the parents. And, in this pattern, especially with narcissistic parenting, the child is asked to be different from who they are. They're asked to be almost like a cardboard cutout of who they are, to be in the image of the parent, not who they are. So this strategy energetically is holding up, right? It's holding up in the chest and in the shoulders, right? It's around the heart. And in the strategy, there's a use of power, maybe overpowering, maybe the use of seduction and manipulation to get what they want. And the fear is of being vulnerable and of being controlled. Okay. So the final strategy is the rigid strategy. This is the wound of having been rejected. This often happens around, what Freud called the Oedipal stage, where, children around age 4 to 6, where children are enamored of their parents and want to marry them. And at some point, they realize that they can't do that. And oftentimes, again, this is sort of a benign experience of, oh, I want to marry you, daddy, or I want to marry you, mommy. and the parent says, you can't marry me, I'm already married to, your dad or your mom. And although this is like a fact of life, it's crushing to the child. This wound also happens in chaotic home environments where the child needs to sort of organize their energy and rigidify it in order to cope with the chaos, the internal chaos. And this can be a situation also where a child is hurried along through life, where there isn't space to be in pleasure and play. It has to be, no, we have to go to this piano performance, or we have to do this and do that. And performance is valued over just being. There's a sense of function over feeling, right? There may be a judgmental or critical home environment. And so there's an energy of leading from the head, not the heart. And the fear, again, is rejection. There's a holding back energy, right? Again, also around the heart. So in each of these fears that I just named, the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, the fear of annihilation, the fear of being crushed or humiliated, the fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, when you fear annihilation, there's a clue as to what's going on in the unconscious. For example, if you fear annihilation, there are parts of you that you're annihilating, parts of your authentic self. When you fear abandonment, there are parts of yourself you have abandoned or that you are abandoning. When you fear defeat, it's likely that there are places in your life that you are defeating yourself. When you fear being controlled, it's likely that you're controlling parts of yourself that want to be free. And when you fear rejection, you are rejecting parts of yourself that want acceptance. So shadow work is about reclaiming these parts by coming into right relationship with them. When I do shadow work with people, folks are often disgusted, put off, have a relationship of repulsion with these parts of ourselves, parts of themselves. And what I mean by being in right relationship is about being in approval of these parts of ourselves, being in compassionate and attuned relationship with those parts of ourselves. We often talk about attuning to other people, especially in secure polyamorous relationships. Let's face it, so many of us are so much better at attuning to others than we are at attuning to these parts of ourselves that we're not that fond of or that we're ashamed of. So I want to ask you, this is one that comes up a lot. What is your relationship to need? What is your relationship to need? What is your relationship to the part of you that's anxious? What is the relationship to the part of you that wants to be liked? What is your relationship to the part that wants attention? And I ask those questions because everywhere in your inner landscape where you're not in right relationship with is a part of you that won't receive. So it's like an energetic intimacy repellent, right? You're not in right relationship with these parts, and these are the parts in your body, let's say, the compartments in your body that are closed off to receiving love. Unless you open the door and let that attunement come in, you won't be able to receive love. And that can happen in relationship, but you can also do it yourself. So while you're frustrated and confused as to why you're not getting what you desire, sometimes it's that. Sometimes it is that you have not opened that space for love to come in. Okay? So how to face the shadow? There's 4 steps. The first step is to observe. Notice and be aware of patterns, repeated experiences, or repeating behaviors in your life, in your relationships, at work, just in life in general, even in your parenting. Just observe and do it from a place of like non-judgmental. You're just observing, you're just noticing. And you're just like, oh yeah, I'm seeing that come up again and again, right? We don't need to beat ourselves up about it. The second step is inquiry, approaching it with curiosity, like, I wonder what's going on there. Not, this is coming up again. You may feel that for a moment, but really come back to this place of curiosity, because where curiosity lives, judgment can't, right? Curiosity like blocks judgment. The third step is approval. When you feel into this part of yourself that maybe is tripping you up, wreaking havoc, choosing the same partner, for example, approve of it. Approve of it, because ultimately it's the way you got hurt. It's a way that you're trying to maintain safety, right? From the perspective of the nervous system, we repeat patterns because they're safe and they're known. So you want to turn towards it with compassion and radical approval. And when we do so, right, we're not pushing it away. We're not creating more of a split. What we're doing is dissolving it by offering it love, because these are the parts that didn't get love. They're the ones that need the most love. Okay. The fourth step is to feel. Complete the emotional cycle, right? Oftentimes there will be tears, there will be grief. Sometimes we will feel rage around not having been met or not having been attuned to. And that those are legitimate. Let those feelings run their course. Move them through your body, through movement. You can even exercise. As long as you're aware and present with the emotion and feeling the sensations of it, you can do this. So again, the steps are observation, right? Noticing and awareness. Step 2 is inquiry, right? Approaching with curiosity. The third step is approval, turning towards it with compassion. And the fourth step is feeling, completing the emotional cycle. Okay. So I'm going to make some shadow statements here. So from the creative strategy, right? Prenatal to 6 months. I will remain split and disorganized. I refuse to be here. I won't be embodied. I will not be human. I intend to keep confusion rampant in my life. I won't commit to anybody or anything, including myself or my body. Right? Then I can stand still and remain separate. Okay, just let those land in your body. Take a breath and feel where that's true for you. Again, without judgment and without shame. So then there's the merging strategy, right? 6 months to 2 years. I'll make you give it to me. Give it to me. I'll take it. It's mine. I won't need. I don't need. I want to get more than I give. I've been deprived, and now it's up to life to make it up to me. Life owes me. I don't want to engage in a give and take. Or conversely, I intend to give unceasingly to others and not receive from others or give to myself. I can then resent and have contempt for others for never matching my generosity. I can be a martyr and never take responsibility for my own happiness. Right? I will give until I'm completely depleted. I will extract from myself. I will sacrifice myself. Okay. Again, taking a breath, letting those land. Okay, the enduring strategy. Remember that I talked about this is where your child is asserting their no and their independence. So the shadow statements here would be, I love negativity. I will repress my real self. I love blaming and being the victim. It's easier than growing up and being a self-responsible adult. I intend to stay deprived and unhappy in my life. That will surely hurt my parents and others who love me. I won't be happy out of spite to punish others. Okay, take a breath. Whew. Challenging strategy, right? Round 3 to 5. My way. I'll make you do it. I intend to withhold from life. I don't trust that my giving freely will be appreciated or returned. I won't trust. I will hold out against other people. I'll punish them by not giving them what they want from me. I'll withhold, and that's how I'll be powerful. Okay, take a breath. Okay, just be gentle with yourself. Just feel that. The feelings move through you. This is okay. We all have shadow. Rigid, the rigid strategy, age 4 to 6. I won't surrender. I'll never surrender. I'll never let you have me. I won't feel. I refuse to feel. I like being cruel and cold. It makes me feel powerful. The more unattainable I am, the more others will have to come after me. I don't care if it's also lonely. I just won't feel. Ooh. So notice the sensation, right? And allow in this moment, shower yourself with radical approval. The places that feel activated in you right now as you hear those statements, shower them with radical approval. Like, yes, I see you. I hear you. I love it. I love that you're that way. I love that that's the way that you protected yourself. You're ingenious, right? Approve of it. And let your heart receive it. Let your heart receive that approval. Breathe it in, inhale it, and as you exhale, recycle it through your system, circulate it through your system like you would circulate blood through your system. Pull it into your heart space and exhale it, circulating it through your system. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to move on to how to bring shadow into partnerships. And this is my favorite part because this is like where we can have fun with our shadows. It doesn't need to be this serious thing, right? And that's why I do like pleasure-based intimacy healing, right? Intimacy-based or rather pleasure-based trauma healing, because it gets to be fun. Like we get to, like, this is about unlocking pleasure. So let's approach it with pleasure. So as I stated earlier, the more intimate the relationship, the more shadow will arise, because shadow is connected to intimacy wounds, right? Attachment wounds, essentially. The importance of bringing it into consciousness and owning it is imperative to being able to bring it into partnerships, right? Because without owning it, we don't have authority over it. So if you don't have authority over it, if you're not aware of it, it's controlling you. But when you own it, when you're in right relationship to it, you own it, you can play with it, you have authority over it, you can like do whatever you want with it. You know, and I often joke that my shadow is my social media manager. Part of my shadow is my social media manager, right? And that's why I show up online in the ways that I do, because it's fun and it's a way for that to be expressed in a healthy way. Like you can bring it into expression in a way that is aligned. And this is what we're doing here in a relationship. So, you know, there's, I'll share a quick story. A former partner had told me they were gonna inform me of what time they could meet me. And I was waiting for them to get back to me so that I can inform my other partners and lovers when I was going to be able to accommodate them, right? Scheduling. It's, you know, how it goes. So when my partner didn't get back to me, I got really angry because everything was holding up, and this controlling part of my personality flared up, got really activated. And so what I decided to do, I felt the energy of like, I want to kill him, right? I felt really, really, really activated, very, very angry, rageful even. And I knew that it wasn't like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big situation, but it just got me flared up. So what I decided to do was, when we finally got on our call, a virtual call, what I did was I turned it into like this sensual dance. And I wore a specific outfit. I picked a song that was shadowy. I got my belt and made all these like snappy sounds with it. And I hit the belt against the bed as I danced. So it was like, it was erotic, it was sensual, it was kind of kinky. And it was also like expressing like this part of myself that was kind of threatening, right? But from a playful place. And my partner was able to see that and appreciate it and be like, I got it. I see you, right? And there was enjoyment in it. So there's ways that you can fold it into your relationship in a way that is kinky and fun and sexy, okay? Speaking of kink, your shadow, part of your shadow can be a persona you play with in a kink scene. For example, we all have the capacity to be cruel. What if you brought your cruelness into your Dom personality, Dom persona, right? And you can do that in whatever way, but it is a way to play with that energy without the experience of feeling guilty. It's like, no, I own it. I know that I can be cruel. I'm not in denial about that. And here's a way that we can bring it into expression that is fun and healthy, right? Healthy for your sex life. So the third way is to name it, to bring it into conversation with the understanding of the sexual and erotic power underlying it. So we can say something like, I can feel the part of me that wants to possess you. Yeah, I can feel that. And I can feel the part of me that wants to just push you away. Or I feel the part of myself that wants to withhold from you right now. I used to have a friend, in fact, where when he would say something like that, we would just burst out laughing because I could feel how juicy it was for him to withhold. Oh, I can feel the part of myself that just wants to withhold. And I was just like, oh, I can feel it too. And it's exciting, right? When we can own it, when it's not a threat, when we are in right relationship, there's a gentleness there. There's like, oh yeah, you're here. There you are. I like you. Come over. Let's play. Let's do this. Let's name you. The fourth way that you can bring shadow into relationships in a way that is fun and kinky is to play with movement. For example, if you and your partner, right, have this awareness and have like bring shadow into relationship in a regular way, you can play with pushing against each other's hands, for example, right? You push against each other's hands, like, oh, God, I just want to push you away, right? Or I want to possess you. Like, I want you to be with me. I want you to choose me, right? Let's name the thing. We bring it into, you pull your partner by their arms, and you can feel in that movement, the tension, the passion, the sexuality, the eroticism. And that's a way, right, where your partner can see you and experience you through movement and expression. So that's it. That's it for this course. I hope that this was helpful to you in understanding what shadow is, how it's connected to intimacy wounds, how to do shadow work from, right, this place of observing and going through the emotional cycle of it. And finally, what are the common strategies, or what are the common ways that shadow comes into our relationships or all parts of our life based on ways that we got hurt. And finally, how we can bring shadow into our relationships in a way that is fun and kinky and exciting and pleasurable. All right. I'd love to hear your feedback. So shoot me an email if you have any questions, or if you're interested in setting up a curiosity call, you can do that through the link on my website. All right. Bye.